By virtue of a coin toss, Barack Obama will have the first hour, John McCain will have the second hour, and at some point over the next 2 hours, we do expect Barack Obama and John McCain to be on stage together for a handshake.
I guess you got my invitation. We're here at Saddleback Church here in Lake Forest, California, and tonight we're going to use the interview format with these two candidates. Now, we believe in the separation of church and state. But we do not believe in the separation of faith and politics, because faith is just a worldview, and everybody has some kind of worldview, and it's important to know what they are. Now, what I've decided is that to allow for proper comparison, I'm going to ask identical questions to each of these candidates, so you can compare apples to apples. Now, Senator Obama's going to go first. We flipped a coin, and we have safely placed Senator McCain in a cone of silence. Now, each of the interviews will be segmented into 4 different sections. We're going to look at 4 different things, and the number of questions answered in each segment will depend on how succinct the senator is. I have to tell you up front, both these guys are my friends. I don't happen to agree with everything either of them teach or believe, but they both care deeply about America. They're both patriots, and they have very different views on how America can be strengthened. Now, in America, we've got to learn to disagree without demonizing each other. And we need to restore civility. We need to restore civility in our civil discourse, and that's the goal of the Saddleback Civil Forum. So let's get started, and will you welcome Senator Barack Obama? All right. Thank you. Good to see you. How you doing? Thank you. Good. Good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Good. Great. Thank you. If you were a tree...
Pretty good crowd you got here.
I got a good crowd.
It's a nice looking crowd.
We're going to talk about 4 different issues tonight, Barack. The first issue is on leadership.
Right.
These first set of questions deal with your personal life as a leader. And I'm not going to do this with any other segment, but as a pastor, I've got some verses that have to do with leadership. And the first issue is the area of listening. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, "Fools think they need no advice, but wise listen to other people." Who are the 3 wisest people you know in your life, and who are you going to rely on heavily in your administration?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me here, Rick.
You're welcome.
And I love the ministries that are taking place here at Saddleback. This is the 2nd time I've been here, and first time we had a wonderful time. Excluding you, of course, as one of the...
and your wife.
I was going to say. There are so many people that are constantly helping to shape my views and my opinions. You mentioned one person I'd be listening to, and that's Michelle, my wife, who is not only wise, but she's honest. And one of the things you need, I think any leader needs, is somebody who can get up in your face and say, "Boy, you really screwed that one up. You really blew that."
Like that
she
too?
is. So that's very helpful. Another person in that category is my grandmother. It was an extraordinary woman. She was never went to college. She worked on a bomber assembly line during World War II when my grandfather was away, came back, got a job as a secretary, and worked her way up to become a bank vice president before she retired. And she's just a very grounded, common sense, no fuss, no frills kind of person. And when I've got big decisions, I often check in with her. Now, in terms of the administration or how I would approach the presidency, I don't think I'd restrict myself to 3 people. There are people like Sam Nunn, a Democrat, or Dick Lugar, a Republican, who I'd listen to on foreign policy. On domestic policy, you know, I've got friends ranging from Ted Kennedy to Tom Coburn, who don't necessarily agree on a lot of things, but who both I think, have a sincere desire to see this country improve.
Yeah.
What I found is very helpful to me is to have a table where a lot of different points of view are represented, and where I can sit and poke and prod and ask them questions.
Yeah.
So that I'm not, so that any blind spots I have or predispositions that I have, that my assumptions are challenged, and I think that that's extraordinarily important.
Okay.
The first one I think would be General David Petraeus, one of the great military leaders in American history, who took us from defeat to victory in Iraq. One of the great leaders, and I'm so proud to know him. 4th of July a year ago, Senator Lindsey Graham and I were in Baghdad. 688 brave young Americans whose enlistment had expired swore an oath of re-enlistment to stay and fight for freedom. Only someone like General David Petraeus could motivate someone like that. I think John Lewis. John Lewis was at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, had his skull fractured, continued to serve, continues to have the most optimistic outlook about America. He can teach us all a lot about the meaning of courage and commitment to causes greater than our self-interest. Meg Whitman. Meg Whitman, the CEO of eBay. Meg Whitman, 12 years ago, there were 5 employees. Today, there are 1.5 million people that make a living off eBay in America and the world. It's one of these great American success stories. And in these economic challenging times, we need to call on the wisdom and knowledge, background of people like Meg Whitman, who have been able to make such a great American success story part of the world's folklore.
Talk about personal life. The Bible says that integrity and love are the basis of leadership. This is a tough question. What would be, looking over your life, everybody's got weaknesses, nobody's perfect, would be the greatest moral failure in your life, and what would be the greatest moral failure of America?
Well, in my own life, I'd break it up in stages. I had a difficult youth. My father wasn't in the house. I've written about this. There were times where I experimented with drugs. I drank in my teenage years. And what I trace this to is a certain selfishness on my part. I was so obsessed with me and the reasons that I might be dissatisfied that I couldn't focus on other people. And I think the process for me of growing up was to recognize that it's not about me. It's about
I like that. I like that.
It's about absolutely. But look, when I find myself taking the wrong step, I think a lot of it times it's because I'm trying to protect myself instead of trying to do God's will.
Yeah, fundamental selfishness.
And so that I think is my own failure. Now,
what about America?
Now, I think America's greatest moral failure in my lifetime has been that we still don't abide by that basic precept in Matthew that whatever you do for the least of my brothers, you do for me.
For me. Yeah.
And that notion of that basic principle applies to poverty. It applies to racism and sexism. It applies to not thinking about providing ladders of opportunity for people to get into the middle class. I mean, there's a pervasive sense, I think, that this country, as wealthy and powerful as we are, still don't spend enough time thinking about the least of them.